Good afternoon, everyone. This is Juan Catamayo, JCT for Education for You. Today, we're taking our virtual trip to Bogotá, Colombia. And we have an incredible friend, dear colleague. He works in the educational sector. Leo, hola, ¿cómo estás? Un saludo para ti en Bogotá, Colombia. We are going en inglés. Sorry, mami, nos vamos en inglés hoy con nuestro invitado. Vamos a traerlo en vivo. Estoy esperando que se conecte. Un saludo para todos. Un día bonito y soleado aquí en Boca Ratón, Florida. Y aquí viene nuestro invitado de esta tarde. Les va a encantar a todos. Estoy muy orgulloso de él. Orgulloso de ser colombiano como siempre. Y vamos a invitarlo aquí. En los programas, ya viene, ya entra la llamada. Aterriza el avión en Bogotá. Juan Felipe Penagos, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, bien, ¿y tú, Juanca?
Bien.
¿Cómo estás? Saludos a todos.
Estamos muy bien. I promise that we will go in English. Are you ready to rock and roll in English?
Yeah, let's try it.
Oh, your English is really good. Juan Felipe, where are you from?
I am from Armenia, Colombia. It is a city in the coffee growing region of the country. It's a small city. I'm from there.
Okay. Where do you go to school? Where do you go to high school?
I went to a state school called Colegio Oficial,
Uh-huh.
which is a ladies' school. And after the earthquake that destroyed that area in Colombia, it was renamed as Colegio Oficial, and then it became a mixed school.
Awesome. And I just want to say hello to Sarah Hoffman, Huposil. I'm sorry for the pronunciation here. I can barely understand your names. But Sarah, she is in education. She worked for a boarding school in Massachusetts. Sarita, please tell everybody that we're going live here. Nicolás, un saludo para ti. And Arturo, otro saludo. We're here with Juan Felipe Penagos. Grew up in Armenia. Juan Felipe, when you were in Armenia, and I have a lot of good friends in Armenia, I love your town. I'm from Envigado, Antioquia, live in the United States for 30 years now. And my question is, when you were in high school, what was your feeling? What did you wanted to study when you were in high school?
Well, I was not very sure because I was actually the youngest person of my class. I ended high school when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
So I had not many options actually, because my family was from a average middle class family. So I knew that I had few options of going to maybe a state university or maybe a nearby private university.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking of studying medicine or law,
Okay.
because my father is a lawyer. And I was also I have been interested in medicine for a very long time. So a neighbor of mine was studying industrial engineering at the University of Los Andes in Bogotá, and he lent me a book, which was the introduction to industrial engineering book of the university. And I read the book, and it blew my mind. So I decided that I wanted to do industrial engineering.
Okay.
So when I graduated from high school, I was the best Saber 11 test score, which is a national, like the equivalent to the SAT in the United States.
Yes.
The best score in the Quindío region, where I am from. But I did not receive any scholarship. I just went
Wow.
to the Technological University of Pereira, which is very close to Armenia.
Yes.
It is a university, and I went there for a year, I think, and then I received a scholarship from Ecopetrol, which is a
Yes.
national oil company, and I had the freedom to choose wherever in the country to go study, and I chose the University of Los Andes and industrial engineering, of course, which was the thing that I had decided to study.
No, and thank you to those scholarships. Many of us are able to fulfill our dreams. I was an athlete in college, cross country, but I didn't have the opportunity to be funded by our own government. So I'm very happy that that you had that opportunity. So now I have a question for you. Armenia, Medellin, we're very close. Did you think about industrial engineering in Medellin, or you were just thinking straight Bogota?
I was not thinking about cities. I was thinking about the possibilities that I had, and I knew that even Medellin was somehow difficult because of financial reasons. Because going
Okay.
to a big city implied a higher cost of living that I was able to afford, that my family was able to afford coming from Armenia. So, and the university in Pereira was actually really, really good in industrial engineering. So I was pretty much decided to finish my degree if I did not receive anything else.
Okay.
I had the chance to go to have the freedom to choose, which is what we're going to talk later when we go into Pilo Paga.
Okay, so now I'm very interested about your high school years. When you were in high school, were you very intellectually oriented on helping your friends and your classmates in high school? Did you develop any programs for your own high school?
I did a volunteering. I was a member of the board of my school,
Okay,
my senior year of high school, and I also served as a representative of the student council.
okay,
And I also was a volunteer for a foundation whose name is Luis Felipe Vélez, which is the partner of Save the Children in Colombia,
okay,
especially in the region. So we developed a project called for an inclusive and public education in the Quindío region, which was intended to empower school leaders of school boards and student councils in the public schools or the state school of the Quindío region. And when as a student, I was a nerd, of course. I did not have many friends, but I was very into my intellectual exploration. I was very curious about many subjects, and I was trying to play instruments. I was trying to learn languages. I was learning English. I was learning French. I was interested in biology, in genetics. I was taking courses in cooking. I also when I was in high school. I was very much into myself, and it's not something I regret, but it's something that I think I would have enjoyed more my friends when I was a kid.
No, I understand. And how are your cooking skills right now in the middle of this pandemic? Are they improving, or what are you doing?
Well, I have gained a lot of weight, so I guess they are improving since I'm eating everything I'm cooking. But yeah, I had a wonderful trip at the beginning of the year to Asia, where I took some cooking lessons and I learned how to cook Indonesian dishes.
Ooh, where did you go in Indonesia? Bali, Surabaya, Jakarta?
I went to Bali, I went to the Java Island, to Yogyakarta and Jakarta, and mainly Bali.
How did you fly through? Did you fly through Australia, or did you fly through Los Angeles, then went down south
No, I went through China.
through China?
Yeah, it was very scary because it was the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay.
So I was afraid that it would be a problem for me, but it wasn't. It was actually really okay at the time.
Okay, I will pause for a second. Nos vamos en español. Be with me for those English listeners. Estamos con Juan Felipe Penagos. Ahora está estudiando su doctorado, terminando su doctorado en la Universidad de los Andes. Vamos a hablar al respecto. Juan Felipe, la razón por la que pausé un poco en español es porque hay mucha gente de fundaciones que se están enlazando con nosotros y si tienen preguntas en español, en inglés, adelante, las pueden poner en los dos idiomas y vamos a movernos de un lado al otro. So we're going back to Indonesia. I had the opportunity to visit Indonesia a couple of times. I have a long story, but I didn't learn none of the cooking skills. I actually did work, visited some high schools in Jakarta, Bali, Surabaya. It was amazing. So I guess you and I we share incredible jobs, and our jobs let us travel around the world. So let's go back. You finish your high school, you move to Bogota. How is the feeling? Because Actually, I was always thinking, I wasn't even thinking Medellin or Bogota. I was thinking the United States. And my criteria to my parents was like, I want to study with the person who wrote the book. And the person who wrote the book on my case is from the US and so forth. How was that feeling being from Armenia moving into a large city? Because I sit on the shoes of high school students that are traveling not only in Colombia but around the world.
Well, it was challenging, but I had an advantage, and it was that I had family in Bogota. So in the
Okay.
first place, I went to live with relatives, and after 1 year and a half, I then went to live on my own at a
Okay.
student house. It was pretty challenging, adapting to a new city, to a new life, to a new kind of weather, to new people, to be in an university that is very competitive, and to go from being the top of the class in my high school to be in the middle of the scores distribution because
It hurts. It
I, I,
hurts.
I had very very good classmates, and I did my it helped me to do my best effort to excel when I was an engineering student. And well, but it was also wonderful because I discovered new passions. I actually began a double major with economics. I did not graduate from economics because I didn't want to write the capstone project, and I went right into the doctorate after my undergraduate. So I did not have the time to do the the coursework that was missing to have the economics degree. But I pretty much did like 90% of the coursework. Um, and I also met people from all around the country. I became very sensitive about inequality. I had the chance to work in some project as a volunteer when I was in at school at the university. I was
Juan Felipe, 1 second. I want to say hello to Paul Green. He's right now at, Paul, where are you right now? In New York City? Paul is a dear friend of mine. He worked for many colleges and universities, important organizations. Paul, tell your friends that I'm here with Juan Felipe Penagos. He's the founder of Ser Pilo Paga. Translation, it pays to be, to have will. So, Paul, please mention this to your friends. Francisco Gomez, Mike Mora. You have people from all over the world that are watching you. Mike is watching from Mexico. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
no, it's fine. So yeah, well, it was challenging. I was a province boy. I was 15 years old, discovering a new city and kind of life, trying to engage in as many possibilities as I could. I tried to make the most of my undergraduate. I took courses in anthropology, in biology, in genetics, in art. So it was a pretty weird coursework for an engineering student, but I decided to follow my instinct when I was building my coursework, and I actually made a lot of friends. Most of my friends nowadays are not engineers,
Okay.
and for people that I met at school at these very weird courses that I had to take, and they became my life friends.
That's really good. Now, do you have to work while you were a student in college at La Universidad Los Andes? Do you have an external job or you were a full-time student?
No, I was a full-time student because my scholarship from Ecopetrol was comprehensive. It had
Okay.
a living allowance support. It was very small, and my family did the rest of the effort. Of course, it was they were a great support, and they invested a lot of in my education.
Okay.
Um, so
So no, that's good, and lucky you, man, and thank you, Ecopetrol, for doing that. And I hope more scholarships will go like that. It was for me, it was a joint venture with my parents, with the scholarship that I got for a little bit of athletics. And then my mom said, "You want to come to Colombia? You got to pay for it. You wanted to buy your clothes, you got to pay for it. You know, education is really expensive." And that's probably one of the reasons you're here because you and I and all the thinkers in the field of education, we got to solve this situation for the students. It's our job to help our future generations. So, Ser Pilo si paga, and let's jump right now. You were the co-founder of this program, and there is a really cool question here from Francisco Gomez, I believe so. Can something like Ser Pilo Paga, be done without the government by involving private entities? What do you think?
Yes, of course. That's actually since the program ended with this new government that we have in Colombia. One of the things we're talking with private companies such as Bavaria, which is the largest brewer in Colombia, that has invested a lot of money in giving scholarships to undergraduate students from their vendors, who are usually very poor women in the country. Many people from industry were convinced from the experience of Ser Pilo Paga that it was worth as a society to invest in education and to invest in good education, not any kind of education. So in Seiba Foundation, which is the place where I work, we are doing a lot of work for advocacy in promoting private investment to higher education in quality institutions. So yes, my answer is definitely yes. I think the crisis is not the best helper for this kind of projects to flourish. But I think that when everything clears up, we're going to be very active in getting funds for that.
I have a very tough question, and I'm sorry for going off the script. But when I mean tough question, I'm here with a country. I live in the United States, and I find it generous when it comes to the private sector. The universities here in the US, I mean, there are 2,700 universities in the United States that are 4 years degree granting institution. Do you think Colombia is a very generous country when it comes to education?
I think that we have to mind to answer that question. I have to mind the cultural difference in what means philanthropy between the United States and what it means in Colombia. Colombia, in my opinion, is not a country with a large or a very long tradition of philanthropy. So I don't think it's not a matter of generosity. It is a matter of culture. We have to develop a culture in which philanthropy is not just paternalism or is not only assistentialism. It is a way of investing and in giving back what society has given to some people in society that have succeeded. So, of course, not only in numbers, but in proportion, Colombia is a less generous country for education than the US. I think graduates from universities are less engaged with universities after they graduate than they are when if they graduated from a US school. And you see that in the fundraising campaigns of universities, and Harvard, Yale, all the Ivy Leagues have enormous fundraising results.
Yes.
And most of them come from their graduates. So,
Yes.
so I think we need to do a very intense job in creating that philanthropy culture in the country, not only from the magnates or the rich people, but also the regular people that have gone to college and they want to give back.
Yes, and I will tell you, when I went to college, my first bachelor's degree, I remember when I graduated, a month later after my graduation, I received a letter from my college. Congratulations, now that you graduated, it's time to give back to your alma mater. And I'm like, what? I already gave you thousands of dollars between my parents, my job, and so forth. But as you were saying, philanthropy is part of the culture, the sustainability of a culture, of getting new students coming on board and so forth. So I absolutely think that is a wonderful answer, that we need to work on that. And it's a very complex answer, and we will deep in during this conversation, because right now you jumped ahead and you went for your master's in science in industrial engineering. You went back, and what were you thinking when you say, I'm going back for my master's in industrial engineering? Were you thinking to do something completely different of what you're doing right now?
Well, I have to tell a little bit of the story. I was doing my internship at the Procter and Gamble company
Hmm.
in sales. I was a salesman for soap and toothpaste.
En Bogotá.
Right in Bogotá, yes. And I was planning to go into finance or into consultancy services. I mean, the professional profile of industrial engineers from Los Andes is mainly people that go to investment banking or
Yeah.
that go to the big four of consultancy or all those companies. And that was my path. And I met Roberto Sarama, who was my mentor in life. He passed away February this year.
Sorry.
It was a very big loss. And he was my advisor as an undergraduate student, and I reached out to him to find my way to what to do my capstone project because I needed to graduate and go quick to the labor market. So he said, you know, I have a very interesting topic that you should think about if you're interested in finance, and the Colombian government has just withdrawn a reform for the higher education law, and they are in need of having new arguments, financial arguments on why the reform is important.
Yes.
So why don't you do that with me? He took me right away to the Ministry of Education. I met the deputy minister, the minister, all the senior staff of the Ministry of Education. I was 21 years old, I think, and we developed a model to measure the return of education in Colombia.
Okay.
And there were many studies, but we had new data, so we rerun the models and we propose new measurements. And that was an important piece of information for the public policymakers to go ahead with some elements of the reform, although it didn't happen at all as a law.
Hmm.
But it was the first stone of my interest in education. So when I received my diploma, he told me, "Why don't you go into a PhD?" So I didn't go to my master's directly. I am in the process also of obtaining my master's. I have been for 6 years in graduate school. It's been a very long time because I have been doing part-time job in Ceiba and
Yes.
part-time as a student and another part-time defending Pilo Paga and doing all the research that was needed to develop the program. So it has taken me longer than expected. So the master's was a last-minute thing. I was not planning to have my master's, but Roberto, before he passed away, he told me, "You have to get your master's." So
Yes.
let's write something out of your research, and let's have a thesis done out of it, and that's what is happening right now.
Perfecto. Un saludo aquí especial aquí a Margarita Gómez. Ella estudió Filosofía y Letras en la Bolivariana de Medellín. Margarita, un beso y un abrazo. Aquí estamos hablando en inglés, Margarita, o sea, quédate, por favor, y te traducimos lo que tú quieras. Saludos a Sebas. Leo también se metió. Max, Tavo, Ani, para todos un saludo muy grande. I have a question for you. So the research fellow that you did was on model thinking and organizational learning, correct?
Yes.
That's the link. But then I'm intrigued. You went to La Universidad de Chile as a fellow, and you did you worked for the physics department as well. You were doing research for the physics department. What happened there?
My doctorate is in engineering, but my subject of research is complex systems, and complex systems are very much studied in biology and in physics.
Okay.
My mentor, Professor Harama, he was a very prominent person in the complex systems field.
Okay.
He was a mathematician, and he had a doctorate in philosophy, in analytical view of language. So he was a very good mix between social science and natural science and engineering to deliver a project that touched both the human side of life, which was solving a human problem, with the theoretical part of a model that came from physics and that came from mathematics, So he thought that I should do a fellowship at a physics department in Chile. I went under the supervision of Professor Juan Alejandro Valdivia, who is the co-director of my thesis. He was a scientist from NASA. He's an astrologist, I think a mathematician and a physicist. And he was at the time he was the chair of the physics department, and I worked with the complex systems group, which he directs. And I had the chance to be in Chile for 8 months doing research on my project, listening to people that were working in solar plasmas and in complex networks and traffic systems. I have been a co-author in a couple of research articles that are mainly focusing in cellular automatas and agent and model systems, which is very weird. But coming to my point of what is my background, it is a very strange mix between engineering applications,
Yes.
social science, for the problem of education, and natural science mainly from physics and mathematics. And all of these are combined to solve a case study, which is how to give equity to education in Colombia through a program. And
Juan Felipe, and I think first of all, no offense, but I'm very happy that you choose to stay on our field of education. We need more people like you. We need more people in Colombia and around the world to provide access to our students. So thank you for sticking around. And the second thing that comes to mind is when you have, maybe you in the future will be the future of a president of a university, or who knows, you may run for office or something like that. But when you're the leading expert of one institution and you gain the respect from your peers by everything that you have studied, so going from engineering, from chemistry, from industrial engineering, from physics to your nonprofit organization, you already have gained 50% of the trust of your fellow colleagues in any organization. So I'm not surprised, because a lot of the colleagues on our field, they move from mathematics to philosophy, and then they love cooking. So you have all the qualities for that, but right now you got to do your job. You got to put your years of study, so you can continue with that. So I have a question for you. Could you explain, I was reading about your PhD, is organizational studies / complex systems. What do you study here? Because we have a lot of complex problems to solve, and especially in the sector of educational sector. Tell us a little bit about that PhD at Universidad de los Andes.
First, thank you for your very generous words. I do not consider myself an expert on any subject. I am a person who is learning. I have had the chance to work with very senior people at a very young age and learn from them. And I have had the chance to have very high exposure to political leaders, to decision makers, to industry leaders, and to be recognized for the contribution of my work. But I am at the beginning of my career, and I would like that my career is helpful to solve very deep human issues such as equity in education, finance in education, and solving those kind of issues that are important to me, because I am the byproduct of an opportunity that was exclusive for a very limited amount of people.
Yes.
And I want that to change, and that's my commitment in life. So I am learning. And to answer your question, complexity is a paradigm of science which is relatively new, because it needs a lot of computer simulation in order to model systems which are different from the analytical perspective or the anatomical perspective or the reductionist perspective of a system, which is mean that you can solve a problem by breaking down the system in very small parts and studying those parts individually and transforming the big problem into small problems that you can solve individually. In complexity, that is not possible, because you have to look at the system as a whole and try to make an intervention at the system as a whole. Of course, that is very complicated, and you need a lot of simulation and a lot of luck in order to be able to transform a system. And that's what we study in catastrophe theory: how to make an intervention at the border of a very complex system, and to generate a catastrophe inside the system, and to model that mathematically and physically in order to look what is the effect of the perturbation at the border of the system. And that is basically, long story short, and not going into the technicalities, what Pilo Paga was meant to be: a very small program that had a big impact in the quality and equity and access in the system. But also, what we did not expect was the very political and social debate around education that it brought to the country, which was very important as well. But it was actually very unexpected. We did not expect that this very small program was that commented.
Yeah, for the colleagues of ours that are around the world, we have viewers from Boston University, Northeastern, you name it, from around the world. University of Miami was here, Babson College. We had an expert from Singapore and so forth. Could you, in 1 minute, explain to them what Ser Pilo si paga, and we translate it, it pays to have will. It pays to have will. What is it, and how many students are impacted in a positive way from this program, if you can quantify that?
Yes. Ser Pilo Paga is an initiative of the Colombian government that was developed from a model that we built between Roberto Sarama and I as researchers. And it found that in the top 5% of the distribution of Saber 11 scores, which are the equivalent of the SAT in the United States, there were around 18,000 people with very low income, and out of those 18,000 people, only 3,000 people went to higher education at all after their follow-up in the data. And out of these 3,000 people, only 1,000 went to good universities under the accreditation system of the country. So 17,000 people were either outside the system of education or in bad universities. And we wanted to know why, if they had the academic abilities and qualifications to go into a university, they did not. And we found that it was because of financial reasons, and not only financial reasons, but they grew in a culture that systematically denied them the opportunity to think on going big. Pilo Paga is basically a program of social justice to give a chance to people that have merit to go to high quality universities, to release the luck that they have because of financial reasons, because they cannot get a loan because they do not meet the criteria, or because they cannot get our scholarship because they are scarce. So we impacted 40,000 people, 10,000 per year between 2014 and 2018. We invested $1.2 billion in the program.
$1.2 billion. Okay.
And the dropout rate so far, the last number I knew, is around 2 or 3%, which is very low compared to the average dropout rate of the country, which is 50% of a cohort. So the program has had many success in terms of motivation, in terms of sending a message that if you have grit and if you have will, you can do it, because it pays off. It pays off to be smart, to study, to make an effort, and not go into a gang or to go to delinquency or go to the informal labor market because you have no other choice.
Wow. Go ahead.
So that's it.
No, and when I had John Lu here, she works for the United World College, and she's the founder of Second Chance, and Second Chance is a program for students that actually during their first chance, they got into amazing universities, but they didn't get full scholarships and financial aid. So she opened Second Chance, and I told John Lu, I want to open Third Chance, a foundation, which is for students that they didn't get the super good scores and grades, and they are your average student from high school, but they still want a third chance. So that's a very complex question to answer as well, because of genetics and structure. Not everybody can have the super high IQs and so forth. And I understand workforce needs the top of the top, but I also believe that the average needs to have that third chance to have a very successful economy. So we will touch up on that one. There is a really good question here, and I think it's from JF Canino. I have a question for you, Juan Felipe. What moves you? What is your inspiration to do all what you do, considering, and he's so right, that doing a PhD is very rare in Colombia?
I have two motivations in life. The first one is curiosity. I like to feel alive and to feel motivated by the satisfaction of discovering new things, meeting new people, getting in touch with knowledge. That's one main engine of my work and my life. And the second one is giving back. I have been very privileged in life to be where I am because I have had the chance to have scholarships, to meet generous people across the road of my life that have put me in important positions of leadership. And they have given me the trust to manage large amounts of money and to have a responsibility to speak for a program of the government or to do research or to be involved. So I want to give back. So those are my two main motivations: discovery and curiosity, and giving back.
That's really good. One of the things that I've been in higher ed. This is my 25th year. November will be my 25th year. Traveled to 89 countries, have helped hundreds of thousands of students. And I always tell my students, I don't care where you work, I don't care what you do, but there's one thing that I'm going to ask you. You be correct. And you do not steal anything, any resources from anybody. Otherwise, I will go back and chase you wherever you are. Now, are you ready for a mano mano? This is a section of this conversation. I want to ask you some deep philosophical questions. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. So you and I, we were born in a beautiful country. They call us the happiest people on earth. We smile, yet we have one of the poorest rates of poverty rates in the world. I'm thinking regiones como el Chocó, Antioquia, La Guajira, el Amazonas, and yet we see this level of corruption that is embedded into politics, in private sector, nonprofit. Everything starts at home. Everything values start at home, from parents telling, do not steal, do not lie, be a good person. So you're starting a very good PhD, an interesting PhD, and it's complex systems. How are we gonna change that model of the easy way in our country? How are we gonna impact our future generations to go in the straightforward route? Go ahead. That's your question.
I think it is a complex problem, and I would like to give a simple answer, but I don't think I can. But I'll do my best. I think that corruption, as a cultural problem of this country, is to have a position of privilege for the idea that the destruction of value through the easy way is more important than doing the hard job and the correct thing to do according to ethical and moral standards. It is seen in economical terms. I mean, you see that those kind of professions that are usually perceived as corrupt are the ones that have the higher economic reward. And I don't want to criticize those professions. What I want to mean is that our country is built on a system of values that puts the rewards and the incentives on the wrong bets, I think. So, Actually, Sir Pilo Paga was useful for me to understand that the cultural problem of having the message of that you have no opportunities in life different from stealing, going to a gang, or going to a very low salaried job in very poor conditions is very bad for the it's a very bad background for creating those nocived values of our culture. So I think that from giving opportunities and equality in access to the opportunities in education, for example, is a very important piece to start changing the culture. That the easy way is actually, which is actually not the easy way, and no one wants to. Being corrupt is not easy. Being stealing in the streets is not easy. Uh, um, being thefting or bribing people should not be. I don't know. I have never done it, but I think it brings a lot of emotional burden
Hmm.
that does it because that person sees that as the only option he has or the easiest option he has. And I think that bringing equality and access to education changes the perspective of people and what their actual possibilities in life are. So programs such as Pilo Paga and many other programs in equity and access to education change the perspective of people of what they are really capable of and what the world can provide them as an opportunity. And I think that is the foundation of everything if we want to change that cheating culture, so to speak.
So you and I, we know about short-term strategies and long-term strategies. Our countries are based on terms, 4 years, 6-year terms, re-elections, and so forth. Do you think governments are continuing strategies that could sustain the system to be a better system, meaning like previous government to this government to the future government, are they following a unique strategy? It feels to me like every government has a strategy instead of applying a macro strategy where they bring the thinkers of the thinkers, they develop a cohort strategy, 20, 30 years strategy, and the baton passes amongst governments with the understanding that yes, there might be some modifications, but do you think that is happening? Because to me, that is one of the problems that new ideas come in 4 years, new government, new ideas, new government, new ideas. So I think there is not much between a long-term strategy and short-term governments.
Well, I think that Colombia has not a tradition of long-term planning in anything. Uh, but we are improving, and as a measure of that is that we just got into the OECD, which shows that in some way we have improved in our practices in government and in planning. I have proposed with Roberto Sarama that the planning of the education sector should not be in charge of the Ministry of Education, which is the execution arm of the government in education policy. We think that the education planning should be in charge of an independent board or an institution, which can be a state control, or it can be a joint venture between the private sector and the NGOs and the state.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Plan for the long term. What is the education that we want, that we need, and the outcomes that we want to measure and to obtain. We have a strategy in the country which is called the decennial plan for education, but I sincerely don't think it's very useful for long-term planning because it's changed every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It is not necessarily an update, and it depends heavily on what government is in power at the time of when it changes. I think that we need to strengthen not only independent boards to plan for the long term, while
Yes.
there is people that is in charge of the day-to-day managing of the school strikes and the school teacher strikes and the universities asking for money and students going to the streets because they don't have enough money to get a loan for higher education. That's a very important part of the job, but that's the job of the Ministry of Education. There should be another institution independent that should thinking on the long term, gathering the experts, gathering the qualified opinions on education from the citizenship, and we also need to strengthen institutions, think tanks, NGOs that are doing long-term initiatives. SEIBA is one example, but the universities are examples of long-term doing of economic development and developing strategies in education. There is a very interesting organization in Colombia called Alianza Educativa, which is a joint venture between 3 very prestigious private, expensive high schools in Colombia, and 1 private university in the country, which is very prestigious as well, to adopt and to operate state high schools. And they have increased enormously their quality and their outcomes. So in terms of long-term planning, it's not only a matter of strategy and thinking, but also institutions that support the long-term implementation of that strategy. And we need to balance these 2 layers of what it means to plan for the long term.
Yes, there are 2 things, because I wanna provide some tools to you guys. SEIBA, as a nonprofit organization foundation, there are 2 organizations that I belong to. I serve on one of the boards for 3 years for International ACAC, International Association of College Admission Counselors. There are around 2,500 members from over 120 countries. I think you guys need to belong to that organization. It's very inexpensive, $75 membership or $100. And then the Council of International Schools, where these deep conversations take place. This year was going to take place in Dublin, Ireland. They move around the world, but those 2 are phenomenal organizations where you can go and create this network and strategic alliances with international education, because more people, they need to know what we're doing or what you're doing in Colombia, which is amazing. I think you are in the right path. Count me in if you need any volunteers right there, but you are on the right path, just helping out 14,000 Colombians and more. I mean, I can go to bed thinking every day, and I tell our team, I say, how are we going to help our students? My goal is not only Colombia, we're trying to help the world in terms of education. So it's a very macro, but I understand. Ed Bustos is the Director of International Admissions at Rollins College. Ed is from Bogotá, Colombia. Also grew up in Ed, forgive me, New York, and you can correct me, but Ed is another great leader here in international education. My highest respects. So amongst each other, we're here to help all of us. Juan Felipe, question. So where do you see Colombia in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and where do you see yourself on those years?
I think Colombia is having a moment of transformation. We are ending a very long history of war and hating each other, and it is going to take a while to forgive. Okay. And while we forgive, we have to look to thrive in other areas. We need to invest more in education, more in healthcare, more in infrastructure, which is one of the biggest challenges, more in regional integration with our neighbors, and in the alliances that we have built, such as the Pacific Alliance, which has been very well recognized around the world as a success case, but Colombia needs to be more ready for that. Actually, in terms of student mobility, it is a great platform that needs to be developed. I think that if Colombia continues the work that has been done in the last 15 years of fiscal responsibility, investing in people and increasing human capital in strategic sectors, and if we do a lot more effort in investing in science and technology than we are doing now, which is not enough. We do not have enough PhDs. We do not have enough research output. We don't have enough research going to industry. We will increase substantially our quality of living. We will go past war. And I think in 15 years, it will be a very different country. And me, well, I don't know. I am about to finish my PhD. I want to continue in Ceiba for some time, because I have many projects going on that I want to be able to see flourish, or at least to give the foundations for them to continue. I would like to have a more international experience. I only lived outside Colombia when it was in Chile. I would like to live in a different culture. I would like to have an international position, and at an international organization, maybe, I don't know, the World Bank, or a multilateral, or a think tank, or a university. I'm open to that. So I see myself working maybe in a different sector, but very special interest in social issues.
Okay, no, that's good. And I have a question here. It just came through me, and it says, ¿Cómo se construye el liderazgo en un país? How do you build leadership in a country?
Well, I think that, as there are many ways to build leadership and to inspire leadership, first you have to build the foundations on which people can be led, and which people can lead. And it begins with education and skills developing. And secondly, I think that we need leaders that inspires us by example. And it comes to terms with the initial question that you posed about the easy way culture that we have in our country. It will be very difficult to lead in a country with the example is to take the easy path, or to wash our hands and to get off with problems. I think we need to be accountable for what we think, for what we say, and to be coherent between what we think and what we say and what we do, in order to lead by example. And that's, for me, the most inspiring kind of leadership. I'm not very acquainted with the theories or the formalities in which leadership is done, but as a person, I feel inspired by leaders that lead by example.
That's really, really good. And I'm conscious about your time, Instagram time. They might cut the tape very soon. They only allow 59 minutes on these lives. But I have a question, Juan Felipe. One of the things that I'm constantly thinking is, how do I communicate with our millennials, but more Z generation, centennials? And this is where you're wearing me a hat, because I want to engage. I want to connect with my audience. My audience are students. They're students from 12 years old to 25 years and so forth. And I want to engage and exercise mindfulness and things like that. How do you connect this complexity of education with our future generations?
Well, it is a very tough question, because I am actually kind of in the middle. I am 28 years old, and I am not a millennial or a centennial, but I'm not a generation above. So I am kind of trapped in the middle, and I've been trying to communicate with very young people to inspire them to work in ideas that are useful for the society. I have had the chance to meet 3 very talented young people from Bogotá in Colombia, and together we are building a project called Ph.D, which is a leadership platform in which senior leaders from the country, from industry and politics, will talk to high school seniors, or to first semester, or to freshmen from universities in Bogotá in this first place, and we will see what happens. We will learn how these very senior people interact and communicate with very young people, and how can they mutually benefit from this connection. And I am sure in 6 months I will be able to answer your question more properly with that result. But I think that is a challenge for our society, for our leaders, and also for our future generations that need inspiration. And sometimes what happens is that communication is the missing part, why inspiration doesn't come to them.
So how are you with social media? Instagram your favorite social media, or which one?
I am a very clumsy person with social media. I am not very I am very active. I have very strong opinions. I am a very opinionated person on Facebook. I have a lot of controversies because of my political opinions, but I like that. Instagram is the journal of photos I like, and I'm a very bad photographer, and I just post anything that
Well, no, no, keep doing what you're doing. And I have one question. Be brief, but what lessons you're taking from COVID-19 during this social distance period?
resilience. I think the only option we have is resilience, and we are learning from this what we have learned from the past. We are going to go through this, and we have to keep what we are doing and to persevere.
Yesterday, I was reading. I love Twitter, and on Twitter yesterday, one lady was saying, "I don't, I can't take the word reinventarme. I can't take more
I
words."
hate it. I hate
Huh?
it. I
So,
hate that word.
so what's the word? What is new? Tell me one word that is new besides
Adaptation.
resilience.
Adaptation. I think I posted a tweet like 2 months ago, which was very controversial because I said that Darwin, in the evolution of species, developed the concept of adaptation 2 centuries ago, and we blew it away with the word reinventation or
Okay.
reinventing ourselves. So I think the word is the same. We have to adapt. This is a moment of change and a challenge for everybody, and it has been hitting us hard for a very long time, and it will keep on hitting us hard for some time more. But we will go through this, and we will survive if we adapt.
Juan Felipe, I think this is a good way to end our conversation. It's been a true honor, inspirational, controversial. Whatever happens, it happens. Free will, free spirit, that's what we're here for. But keep doing what you're doing. Empower our Colombian education system. Keep fighting that fight because I know it's not easy. You have a lot of troops here of educators that want to help you, and we want to go the right way. We want to help our future generations. So I want to invite you over in the future, probably in the fall, because I want to follow up on that question about social media and integration with different generations. I want to see the results from your research. We also want to say congratulations. Soon you're going to be called Dr. Juan Felipe Penagos, and to Fundación Ceiba, to your program that you co-founded, Pilo Paga. Good job, man. We're very proud of you, and thank you for being here. It's been an absolutely honor. Thank you. Muchas
Thank you so
gracias.
much. You have been so generous. I have been very happy talking to you and to your audience. And sure, I will be very happy to talk to you again, to share with people. I am open to conversations. I am happy to talk to people, to learn from people. I am learning, and I
Okay.
hope to learn from a lot of people. And thank you for putting me in your community. And I'm sure it's going to be very valuable for me.
Thank you. Stay safe, my friend, and I see you soon. Un abrazo. Gracias.
Ciao.
Ciao. Bye.